Hello everyone, a warm welcome to this webinar on the topic pandemic preparedness and vaccine discovery and development in Africa. My name is Clive Nyaribo, project coordinator for the Vaccine Workforce Development Program. I work closely with the project co-leads, Professor George Warimu and Marianne Munene. Before we get started, a few housekeeping matters. Kindly take note that this webinar is being recorded. Kindly feel free to use the chat option to share your questions during the presentation and we'll address them during the Q&A session. We'll have a few open slots for the attendees to directly ask questions to the presenter. If your internet is stable, you can raise your hand using the available icon. Please take note that AI, note takers, and automated transcription tools are not permitted in this session. Unauthorized ports will be removed. This is a series of planned webinars with the goal of to provide information on various topics in the field of vaccinology. This being run under the KEMRI-Wellcome Trust Research Program, which is a well-known health research unit of excellence. Over the years, we have excelled in the use of novel ideas and collaborations to achieve better health for Africa, while also developing African scientific leaders. Our vision of the program is to undertake cutting-edge and novel research relevant to national, regional, and global needs. The Vaccine Workforce Development Program is funded by the Gates Foundation and aims to expand the technical know-how and capability for sustainable end-to-end vaccine R&D and manufacturing in Africa through training and knowledge exchange activities in the vaccine ecosystem through a multidisciplinary and partnership approach. Why this is important is that Africa currently relies on vaccine imports and vaccine donations for up to 99% of its routine immunization needs. The Vaccine Workforce Development Program is investing in local talent, strengthening technical expertise, thus building manufacturing capability, improve vaccine access, and reduce dependence. The Vaccine Workforce Development Program has 4 core initiatives. One, we have the Vaccinology School Engagement Program, where students from the local secondary schools are engaged during open days and lab tours with career talks to spark their interest in vaccinology and careers within this field. 2, we have the Vaccinology webinars like this one, where area career scientists, graduate and undergraduate university students across the globe join webinars that provide information on various topics in the field of vaccinology. 3, we have the Vaccinology in Africa course, which is an annual master's level course that attracts participants from across the continent for strengthening theoretical knowledge on vaccinology. 4, we have biomanufacturing apprenticeships that provides hands-on training in vaccine manufacturing facilities across the globe. Today, we are glad to have Professor Nicaise Ndembi, who will be discussing the topic pandemic preparedness and vaccine discovery and development in Africa. Professor Nicaise Ndembi is the Deputy Director General and Regional Director of the IVI Africa Regional Office based in Kigali, Rwanda. He's also an associate professor at the Institute of Human Virology, University of Maryland School of Medicine, as well as research professor at the Kanazawa University School of Medicine, Department of Viral Infection and International Public Health, where he completed his doctorate in virology. Prior to joining IVI in 2025, Professor Ndembi was the principal advisor of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Africa CDC Director General, where he established the Partnership of Africa Vaccine Manufacturing, creating a framework for regional vaccine manufacturing and self-reliance. Additionally, the position of Deputy Incident Manager, MPOX and MABAG, Content of Prevention, Preparedness and Response Plan for Africa. Africa stands at a pivotal moment in its journey towards health security and self-reliance. Scientific capacity is expanding and manufacturing is scaling up, yet global health financing is declining, putting hard-won progress at risk and exposing fragile systems. This moment calls for African-led solutions more than ever. Professor Ndembi is currently leading the Achieve Africa Initiative, an African-led member state champion to continental response to this moment. Currently at 100 million USD initiative designed to close Africa's research and development gap and to strengthen the continent's engine for vaccines and biologics from discovery to clinical trials and regulatory readiness for a sustainable vaccine manufacturing ecosystem in Africa. Professor Ndembi has authored and co-authored over 300 peer-reviewed papers and chapters in professional journals. He is the editor-in-chief of the Journal of African Journal for AIDS and Infectious Disease, a journal of Society for AIDS in Africa. He has been named to the 2025 Time 100 Health list, recognizing the 100 most influential people in global health. and 100 most notable peace icons in Africa 2025 lists. Over to you, Professor Ndembi.
Thank you so much. Let me first thank you for inviting me. I think let's start by also acknowledging our colleagues on the line, our friends of Africa, that and all partners that have joined this very important session. So what I'm going to do quickly is to run you through the journey on pandemic preparedness and how do we respond to some of these outbreaks across the continent. So this is the outline of my presentation, and it's on fourfold actually. I will provide the background and then the statement of purpose. And again, thanks to KEMRI, and I'm welcome here for the invitation. And I'm providing that really statement so that you start thinking through before actually I land on to where we all want to see Africa be, the Africa we want. So, and then how is the International Vaccine Institute navigating this or contributing to this Africa agenda? And the pandemic preparedness, how prepared are we? And Achieve Africa, an initiative we've launched. When I was at Africa CDC, we launched several initiatives. I think that's, again, you really think, and at any circumstances, I think you think to really, how do we address the problem at hand? And initiatives are not just meant to be acronyms and so on. They really are to really address fundamental critical issues at a specific time point. And then we'll together conclude really the session. Number one, I think the audience, it's a bit diverse here, and Clive, you can agree. But I'm looking for the next generation of scientists, postdocs, and also the mentors that are in the midst of this audience, because we really want to make this attractive, what we're doing. We want to be sure that we are model for our next generation, because we need more hands. And the problems are huge. There's a lot to do. Everyone has a space here. And some that have not even decided where to move career-wise, we really want to be sure at the end of this call, you can make a decision. So by participating already, and then I say thank you to Wellcome and KEMRI here, because it's important that we disseminate information, we share knowledge. And this platform, I think this is excellent. That's the way we want things to happen across the continent. And number one, by participating, we're already contributing at individual level, because that's important. Whatever we're going to do, start with you first. And then that's the most important investment that the continent has to really put into each of those 1.5 billion. I say we, some of us here, we had a chance to benefit from our government, from the continent, getting trained abroad and so on. But I think some the privileges are not the same. So you all agree with me. So we have to find a way to break that fragmentation and share that knowledge across board so that we can diffuse it and get it spread for people to get where they want to be and aspire to be. So I think the first, at that individual training I mentioned, we need for this continent skills in surveillance, skills in epidemiology, in clinical trials, statistics, data analytics, bioinformatics, skills in lab science, virology, diagnostics, science writing, communication, policy expertise. You can see with me that there are almost like 10 different fields that we need people, we need you on the other end that have not made a decision yet. Those people here to move this agenda. Agenda 2063, I want all of us to go and read it, because this is all about how we want to be the blueprint for this really master plan, or how we want to move Africa, how we want to see Africa by 2063. I can tell you 100%, I'm trying my best. to contribute to that agenda. And we want to see all of you trying also your best to do so. And that's why I bring in these science research capabilities. Every single day, I think of a project or I write a grant, we need these skills. We need these skills. So if we have those skills, that will counter the brain drain. The dream is not to be in London or UK or United States or Asia somewhere, wherever you want to be. But really, wherever you are, you can contribute the little component or relative additions to what we already have to break or to feed that gap that we have. I think we're familiar with the brain drain. But remember also there's reverse brain drain. The reverse brain drain, someone in New York or in Australia, and saying, there's a project in Africa, Achieve Africa, and it actually cut across the ecosystem, and R&D, I can contribute my quarter to that project. That's the way I'll contribute to the biomanufacturing localization in Africa. And then you actually apply to join the team. And then from Australia to Africa, you bring that knowledge in your suitcase to move the agenda. Let me show each of us, not expecting only government to do so. I'm saying that very, really insisting on it, because we usually, where we are in our own conversation, the government is not doing anything. No, what are we also doing? Because this is important. The government, they have thousands, millions, billions activities on their plate. So we also have to contribute our quarter to this. So now we support our leaders and structure some of these trainings and mentoring, and then build also institutional support through grantsmanship. Because if you have skills, you have been trained, and you have the expertise, you have to look for funds, actively looking for funds. And you also know that there's a competitive environment currently with all these grant funding cut here and there. So it's more even challenging. But I always say it, good grants always get funded. Great application get always funded. So I think I'm starting on this note really, so that on a really serious note, we see ourselves in there as part of the contributors, not as consumers. So now the next is on me a little bit, so to show how we can do that together. So I'm using the last Mpox outbreaks, which I contributed as really at continental level. I was posted in the DRC. I never expected to work in the DRC, but this is our lovely continent. We can work everywhere. I was tasked with a lead. I hope he's on this call. We were working together. I was Dr. Ngachi. We were posted in August to DRC to respond to Mpox outbreaks. That was initially the DRC, because there were cases here and there, like fireworks across the country, and they needed a response. And then at the Africa Centers for Disease Control, we need to respond. I think, again, this is a very strong, really, I commend all the colleagues at the Africa CDC, WHO, UNICEF, and all the partners and research partners as well that were all part of that continental response plan. So I think by no means it's my only response, but it was a collective and a group that was working closely to be sure that we use those extinguisher and the tools at hand to really stop the spread of the virus. So in that particular one, you can do a lot. You can do whatever you can do in the field. And if you don't publish it, no one get to know what you're doing. I'm saying it very clearly. And that's why those skills earlier, I mentioned writing skills. We need them. We're not publishing. We're not saying we're not putting on paper what we're doing. And there are some few here, I commend them every time they shared some good papers published, and whichever journal you publish is enough. Put it in the public domain. People will learn from it. You might think that is not interesting. That's interesting. Go from your on the shelves where you have packed this data, analyze them, and then put them out there in the public domain. So during that Mpox response, we published extensively, as we were responding to the Mpox outbreak, because that's the way to go. It doesn't have to wait to the end. No, as we actually see how the outbreak, the epidemic is evolving, then you actually reposition the conversation. It could be vaccines, accessibility, or equity. Then you write on it requests for the global attention to actually provide these medical countermeasures for the continent. Because an outbreak in Africa can end up in New York or any part of the world. And COVID taught us really that lessons. We know where it happened somewhere in a rural village somewhere in China and ended up in our rural village in Africa. So we really want to be sure we're outspoken. So these are publications. I think I can tell you everyone can publish in these journals. One, you have good data. The same thing, if you have a good proposal, you can get funded. The same thing, you have a good paper and a good message, straightforward, you can get published in all these journals. The Science, Nature Communications, the Lancet, the New England Journal. I'm motivating you guys on the line to say you can do it. And the message are pretty clear. Mpox, I'll tell you subsequently. If you tell you when the smallpox is centuries, but we're still dealing with Mpox and we're looking for medical countermeasures, we're looking for diagnostics, something that has been there for a century. So I think this is, I'm setting the scene really for this very important dialogue. I see it as a conversation between all of you. And then I don't stand to be correct on all what I'm going to say here. You might disagree, but this is my strong opinion on this. So this one led to what Clive mentioned, recognition. I didn't expect to be in the Time magazine. That was never been my dream. Never be part of my dream. My dream has always been, after my PhD in Japan, to support this continent wherever I can do, whatever I can do. But that was a signal. And that strong signal is that whatever you do in your small corner, people are paying attention. You expect that people are not saying, they're actually watching you. I think, and then every good work gets rewarded. That's already the third point I'm saying. Number one, a good proposal application always gets funded. Number two, you can publish in any journal in the world if you have a good message, straightforward and convincing message. It can be controversial anyways, but you have to be sure that you have the fact at hand. Number three is that whatever you're doing in your small corner in one of these institutions with no lab reagent and so on, but you are struggling to get things done there, someone can get and pay attention to you, directly or indirectly. So now I think I've said that from that statement. Now let's move on. Mpox is one of those examples I'm going to use because it's still recent in what we're doing. But look at this, the figure on the right panel. I think you recall in 2022, Mpox was declared by WHO as a public health emergency of international concern. And this was during actually the tail end of COVID-19, where there was a lot of really enthusiasm and then a lot of things around research and so on. And then we always, again, Africa stood and then we raised again vaccine inequity, because there was no single dose of Mpox vaccines that was delivered to Africa during the Mpox in 2022. In fact, it's at the end of completely, when the cases subsided and it was declared over, that some of the countries like Nigeria, the vaccine they requested during 2022 were delivered. And some were actually used during the 2024 outbreak. Really, it's really interesting. And it's good to know all this because it actually called, and I will tell you later, really for investment into research and development, for leadership in what we're doing. So basically, I think, again, kudos for the leadership. At the Africa CDC, they took a bold step in declaring Mpox before the WHO, first time in August 2024. And this is, again, part of the data that the team at Africa CDC, when we're scanning through the data, you looked at the epi curve, 2 weeks average, you can see that, again, that by the end of in 2024, the cases were actually raising almost tenfold to at the point that we're actually in 2022 when it was declared. We raised that flag in Nature Medicine. And then it actually called for attention to from the US CDC. And they called for a meeting. And then now we have to bring partners together. And that's why we ended up saying we really have to call this and then declare that it's a public health emergency of continental security. That's the way data can be translated into policy, can also be translated as a really strong basis, as of course, always to really make a decision. And then it actually was a point to develop policies around really declaring outbreaks, because the Africa CDC has that mandate of declaring public health emergency of continental security. I think this is very important. Now, how globally have we been doing? I think it's not good. Historically, if you look at the deadly plagues, epidemics, and global pandemics, we are exposed, we are vulnerable, and more exposed due to really climate change that you're all seeing. We are encroaching into animal habitat more and more. I think it's normal because our population are going now deeper and deeper in the equatorial rainforest to get more food. And then they're going to be exposed to those animals. And then obviously they're going to be zoonotic transmission. So I think this is where we are landing. I think it's not new. But what I want to bring to your attention as you are really looking through this slide, smallpox, look at it, 1520. Then you look at it there again, cholera. That's 1817. I'm going to bring you back to this initially. Please don't really crystallize this in your brain. See that we are almost a century when these some of these plagues were actually first characterized. I think this is important. And then the question will be, what have we been doing then? So the next one, I think the most recent is COVID-19, 2019, but I mentioned Mpox, but we're looking here in terms of deadly, really. I mean, the avian flu, and then you all recall the Spanish flu, and so on. Those are things we are looking at. So now it's important. Whoever is in the room, coming from wherever part of the world, I wish you had a map where everyone can actually place a dot on that map and say, I'm from Russia, yeah, I'm from Nairobi, I'm from Yaoundé, Cameroon, or I'm from Buea, Cameroon, or Mombasa, Kenya. But the point I'm making here is that we are so connected. And this data is just from 3,200 airports globally. And every single day, those that have been traveling, you can see movement of people globally. I think it's usually we forget it. We move with these viruses. As we move, the virus is also moving. And that's where the concept of no one is safe until all of us are safe is true. It's very true. Because we are moving with the virus. No one, if we all stop moving, that's fine. The virus will stay where it is. But if we move, we are moving with the virus. And it means there's a likelihood and there's a risk of transmission of the viruses, deadly or not. So, I mean, we are globally at risk. So it means that investment in R&D, investment in low middle income countries, high income, I think is beneficial for all, for public good. Now, let me transition. So the International Vaccine Institute, what are we doing? I think this might be new for some of you in the room. I think it's good that we quickly run through that. And that's where I am. I'm serving as Deputy Director General and then Regional Director for Africa. So the International Vaccine Institute is a UN-chartered international organization and dedicated to accelerating vaccines R&D for global health. So I think you can look there. I mean, we have our report, the annual report 2024 is online. For those who need more information, please, we're happy to share that with Clive, and then you can distribute within the network. Our mission is to discover, develop, deliver safe and effective and affordable vaccines. I will insist on affordable. You can have a vaccine that is efficacious, safe, but cannot be delivered in my rural village somewhere in Sokoto. No, that's and then it probably costs $10 per dose. No. It's not affordable. And if it's not affordable, you can't reach everyone everywhere. That's going to be the limitation. And by at least we know that when the Mpox strike in the DRC and it was spreading like fireworks, the vaccines was around $10 per dose. So it's not affordable when we're looking at 25 cents. And who's going to procure that? I think these are the big questions in the development. And for PDPs, when we are developing vaccines,
Yes, Prof. You're muted.
okay, I've been told my mic is muted. So, there are four fundamental pillars: lab research, vaccine development, epidemiology and surveillance, and vaccine effectiveness. So the vaccine effectiveness, we have one currently large vaccine effectiveness on the LC16 vaccines from Japan. And this is so important, that study, because during the mpox outbreak, we noticed that actually cases, the high prevalence of mortality among children, but there was no vaccine covering that age bracket. And that's a huge gap. But again, that's the way we need to think. Are we covering all these age groups? But in this particular case, that's a good one where vaccines, the cases were more among children than adult. And then the vaccines was only covering the adulthood, I mean the adults, and then young and adolescents. So that's important. So we're looking into those, again, contributing to this agenda on research and development and vaccines. So IVI in Africa, we have 50 IVI projects in Africa, grouped into 4 buckets: 2 end-to-end vaccines development project at BioVac in South Africa around cholera vaccine, OCV, and then a second one again in South Africa at Afrigen mRNA Rift Valley fever vaccine. The second bucket, surveillance, is important. Vaccine discovery starts with surveillance. So 29 surveillance effectiveness policy advocacy project, 8 clinical trials, 1 phase 1, 5 phase 2-1, and 1 phase 1, phase 2. And then 11 capacity building project. And all these spanning across different diseases. And that's the beauty of IVI. We are not really narrowing on only 2 or 3 pathogens, really across the different ones. So I think this is what we have on the continent currently. So a footprint, I think you can see from ongoing activity and those completed, that we have a footprint across the 5 AU geographic region. We are really increasing in terms of accessions of member states and requests or interest to join the IVI establishment. We have over 23 project host countries. You know, we have 55 member states in Africa. So almost 23. We have projects in 23. So close to 50% of the African member state currently. And 4 collaborating centers in Burkina Faso, Ghana, Ethiopia, and Madagascar. So now, what is our experience on vaccines? We have several in the pipeline, but now the 3 more, almost, I think most of us here in the room, you might be actually familiar with this. The OCV, it was funded, the cost for developing from discovery to WHO PQ, around $28 million funded by the Gates Foundation. And again, thanks to the Gates Foundation, we're really supporting this agenda on local manufacturing. And then the manufacturer is in South Korea. And then you can see the manufacturers are in South Korea. And then typhoid, the second, $29 million, Gates Foundation as well funded. And then the third one, salmonella, typhoid. So you can see clearly, and then we're moving with Klebsiella, and then subsequently it could be mpox, a cheaper one, or dengue or chikungunya. We're on it. So I will let you know when we get to that point. But the point I'm trying to make here, if you look at the cost, 28 million is one of the cheapest usually Some of the PDPs are about $100, $200 million. But we are really, because we are looking at really the model, the low middle income country, affordability, and then also being sure delivery, so I can bridge the gap on access. So that's probably the cheapest all of those vaccines, and then it costs less than 25 cents. That's the beauty of what we're doing in terms of ensuring. And then these vaccines, over 200 million doses have been distributed globally. So now let's move to the core or the substance of our presentation. I think now we're all landing now. Everyone is now understanding where we're heading to, the direction of travel. I talked about already the the ecosystem in which we are dealing with, deforestation. Some of those we talk about pandemic, even antimicrobial resistance. And by the way, in September, there's going to be a large conference in Nigeria. I think most of you will be definitely invited to join, to attend, on antimicrobial resistance. That's probably the first on the continent on that topic. I thought about climate change, I think also contributing to really this zoonotic transmission. But how do we respond to that at government level? At governmental level, honestly speaking, the One Health concept should be really implemented fully. Multi-sectoral approach, not the Ministry of Health working in silo, the Ministry of Environmental in silo, agriculture and so on, working. They don't know whoever is doing what. And when there's a new outbreak sparking from the zoonotic animals, then it's all left to the Ministry of Health. And they have no control. And then so these are the things we have to talk about. Water, hygiene, and sanitation is not Ministry of Health. But cholera and so on, typhoid, it's all around hygiene. And then again, the policies for Ministry of Health, but ensuring that we have water. It's not the prime mandate of the Ministry of Health. But again, these are the things that we need to talk and be really candid around the way we approach this business. So on the right one, I talked about these plagues and so on, but just to give you an idea so that you see how the emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases are really threatening the whole globally, our continents. So you can see clearly that Africa, we are not really spared, right? So it means that it's all over, it's everywhere. And again, reinforcing the concept I mentioned earlier, no one is safe because it's everywhere. That there's a risk. There's no zero risk here. We're all at risk. So now you look at it, scan it a little bit. If you look from 1950 to 2020, I think this is from my previous boss and mentor, Dr. John Kengason, in publishing in really a nice full review on this. So 1950, you already have chikungunya, Zika, 1960, Ebola, 1970. You look at those Mpox, 1970. Isolated in the DRC. The same Mpox that was creating panics 2 years ago in the DRC. That was where? That's the mother of all plagues, where even we should invest into R&D to be sure we get all those new viruses or pathogens from, because every time at any time something can emerge from those, the equatorial rainforests. So I think you can look at it, cholera and so on. So, but again, the point here is that you can see Africa, there is a frequency emerging and re-emerging of some of those diseases, I think going back to the 1950s. So now we're landing on where we're vulnerable. We all agree. I think if someone disagrees, but this is my strong opinion, we are most vulnerable in Africa. And this review actually, with the index of vulnerability, shows Africa there. We are really, really most vulnerable. We are most at risk. And we don't have all the countermeasures. So I think I'm telling you what we're going to do probably next, so that we don't just raise issues, but we provide solutions. That's the way to go. We stop crying. We don't have vaccines. Oh, next outbreaks or pandemic. Oh, again, we are back up the queue. Oh, there's no vaccine. Inequity. No, it's not fair. No. We have to stop crying. So I think we need to start thinking collectively. And we have smart brains on this continent. So I think 30 new pathogens, more than 75 animal origins, Every year, more than 200 health emergencies. The Africa CDC and WHO report more than 200 outbreaks in 2025. 200. Some of you are not aware because it's not at the like of COVID where you were all scared. When you have Marburg here, chikungunya here, dengue, cholera, those are the 200 I'm referring to, not the same. And they can reoccur every year, probably cholera during rainy seasons, probably. So all these things where these agencies they have to face. I think kudos to those agencies because with limited resources, they're really attempting to do what they can do. There's a limit to what you can do with limited resources. Now, prior to COVID, this is the GEE. It's a very excellent tool from IHR, very excellent. I love this in terms of evaluating the level of readiness or preparedness. If you look at the capabilities here, again, this is before COVID. I'm saying it because I would love to see what's happened post-COVID because obviously, the expectation is that we'll build capability during COVID and we can sustain and be ready for next outbreaks. That's the assumption. But we need to see that GEE post-COVID. So now when you look at this, I'll just zoom in onto surveillance. You see that, and this is for 40 of the 55 African Union countries. So that's a good number to make an inference and probably as assumption for the statistician in the room, it probably is statistically significant, as they will say. So you look at this, we have reds there, and it's quite some, right? And the green ones are beautiful colors, are really skewed somewhere there. And if you look at surveillance, because this is the issue, if you don't do surveillance, it means that you don't know what you're dealing with. And remember my slide on this airport movement. It means that someone from Mararaba or someone from Sokoto is moving with something, or from DRC, Kisangani, somewhere. If surveillance is not done, the guy is moving really freely and nicely, enjoying his flight, and then he's spreading the virus. We're not ready then. Out of the 40-15, you have a very good surveillance. I think this is post-COVID. I have to really be sure that there's a disclaimer that it's post-COVID, before COVID, so that we see. Now, having seen this picture, this is a confirmation. When COVID hit the continent in Egypt in 2020, January, no single country had the capability to diagnose SARS-CoV-2. No single. You see the level of vulnerability. No single. So now it means that obviously the virus was moving. It was just circulating around, transmission and so on. I think that's the case. I remember always that slide on the airport. Now, I think the Africa CDC step, that's a very excellent leadership, Ambassador Dr. John Kengasong, and immediately convened a continental meeting to address this issue at hand. That's where leadership is important. And remember this from Maxwell, leadership rises and falls on the leaders. So now I think you see that, and then in February, Senegal and South Africa had actually developed the capability, and then they were now training other member states, inviting them for workshops, hands-on trainings. And then by August, wonderful, the map is green, the beautiful picture. I think the lovely color, the green one. This is a message that also, when we're pushed to the world, Africa can deliver. In 8 months, all single countries. So there are smart people around. Don't undermine their capabilities. They were able to grasp the technology and they be able to diagnose it in less than 8 months, all countries. 55, excellent. 20/20, A grade plus. So now, again, to show that there's a strength and capability on this continent, we move forward into genomics, next generation sequencing. That's really fantastic. Top-notch science, NGS. Again, there from 2019 to 2025, 46 of the 55 African countries had a next generation sequencing in their own national public health laboratories, the Illumina, all the fantastic platform that you know. The technology was grabbed, bioinformaticians were trained, and in analytics and so on. They could draw phylogenetic trees and so on. They can look at mutations that are linked to resistance. Fantastic. Again, that's the strength in actually engaging and building capacity and human capital. So we can do that. So now we move in here for the lessons. You look at this, almost a year plus in the COVID-19 pandemic, when the global north were moving to third series, fourth series vaccination, Africa, we were not vaccinating because the vaccine were just not available, or they were available too late in the pandemic, because in the case 6 months in the pandemic, we didn't have access to the vaccines. So that's a big problem. So, and then the head of state, again, through the leadership of the former DG of Africa, CDC, was asked to do an assessment, a gap assessment. And more importantly, Africa was not going to the table as a beggar. We mobilized $2 billion to procure the vaccines. But the vaccines were not just available. We couldn't. I remember the whole story. I won't name the pharmaceutical. We went there. We have the money. We're not begging because we are always begging. That's why when you see a beggar around, you think that it's actually begging. That's the point. He might be actually asking you, oh, sir, there's something wrong there. No. You see that the guy is begging. So we're coming in and say, we have 2 billion, sir. We need vaccines for our people. They say, no, there's no vaccines. It's like you go to the shop, the next shop in the village, you want to buy bread. They say, no, I have money. They say, no, we're not selling you bread. So today there's no bread. So basically, we had no access. We have the money. But the head of state said, okay, now what is the problem? We have 2 billion. We cannot manufacture these vaccines or other medical countermeasures. So then the conversation started around building capability for vaccine manufacturing in Africa. And we have the statistic that everyone is using. 90% of the vaccines used in Africa are imported. Only 1% manufactured. And even the 1% is on yellow fever from the Institut Pasteur of Dakar. And they have been doing that for almost more than a century. So now it means that we can do that. We can manufacture. So the next point is we have to put together a framework for action. What do we need to manufacture? And the head of state endorsed the target that by 2030, at least 30% of the vaccine will be manufactured on this continent, and by 2040, at least 60%. But this can only happen if we have several enablers that we have identified through that framework of action, which is available online on the Africa CDC website, namely market shaping and demand intelligence, financing, IP and tech transfer, human capital development, research and development, regulatory systems, because now the question will be a vaccine made in Africa. When we start made in Africa, I think that you have to be meeting all the global standard. And then we made for a yellow fever, because the yellow fever vaccines from IPD can be found anywhere in the world. Maybe you can also do that for other vaccines, actually, or other medical countermeasures as well. So this will require really a blended approach on traditional and innovative or disruptive technologies. I will talk a little bit more about that, zooming on mRNA technology. So, and again, from the Africa CDC, I think being a continental agency, there was really a call to see exactly what is the frequency when we say emerging and re-emerging, and what is actually the prioritization, the risk ranking, because this is important for developers. If I'm a developer, I'm actually interested looking into really having one of those antigens selected to move into really phase 1 and so on for the early discovery. I need to know what is the frequency. I need to know the volumes and so on. And that's exactly usually the case. You don't just go in and pick a very rare disease that you only have 2 cases per year. So who's going to procure this? It's not a viable market. Really, it's not a viable market. That's what they'll tell you. That's the word they're going to bring it to you. It's not viable. And then and it is right. So you need to look into volumes to be sure we sustain the industry. So then you can see the ranking there, Ebola, cholera. You can see cholera is still top there. And I'm going to come on that one later. But again, that's a very beautiful tool and a fantastic, again, a tool, instrument developed by the Africa CDC as part of this agenda. So these are different representation of what the initial slide presented. But if you look at the risk trajectory and the epidemic potential, and then you look at those diseases I mentioned earlier, the disease severity, preparedness, unfortunately, you see still cholera there. Remember that the breaks, cholera is almost a century ago. The last case of cholera in Britain, 100 years ago. The last case in the US, almost 100 years ago. But last year alone, cholera killed over 6,000 deaths due to cholera in Africa. So it's unbelievable and then unacceptable. So that's what prompted a call from the president of Zambia. He is the champion for cholera. I think the African Union champion for cholera. So he's really championing the cause of cholera, vaccines, medical countermeasures, multi-sectoral. I had the privilege to meet with him. He's very, really invested into this. And then the op-ed in The Guardian was, cholera is spreading fast, yet it can be stopped. Why haven't we consigned it to history? Correct. But the question is, what do we do now to be able to meet this expectation from our leaders? So just to scan through quickly, I think from 2021 at least to 2025, the fifth cholera pandemic, with the demand for vaccines has always exceeded the supply. Always. So we don't have enough vaccines, but we have more cases. And as we speak, there are more than 20 African countries, usually during rainy season, experiences outbreaks of cholera. It's either they will use one dose because there's no doses enough to be able to do that, or they don't even do it. So the preventative and the reactive, we are not just doing it. So I think we need to probably think about the way to move this. And I told you, IVI, we are moving this technology, the tech transfer to BioVac. BioVac has actually moved to phase 2 for the cholera vaccines they are developing 50 years after South Africa started really putting project on manufacturing. They will finally have a drug substance for cholera with the support from different partners and the tech transfer from IVI and U Biologics. This is a great milestone for this continent. We're moving forward. After yellow fever, now cholera. So this is fantastic. It's a good progress. But again, it's to say vaccines, probably the most important tool or critical, but not the only tool in this context. As I mentioned earlier, WASH is also something we need to invest into. So I'm moving again and saying, during COVID-19 pandemic, we know that vaccination reduces SARS-CoV-2 transmission. We knew it, and we have data. We have data in science suggesting direct protection effect of vaccine over 94%, indirect protection of household members over 72%. I think vaccines really can play a key role, but again, in a toolkit. In that toolkit, you have several other things. You have therapeutics, you have monoclonal antibodies and biologics that can be used actually to be able to address this. And let me tell you and give you an example. And then I'm going to ask a question, and the winner, Clive, you're going to give him a prize from IVI. This slide is so excellently describing what a vaccine can do. These are the outbreaks, the Marburg outbreaks in Rwanda, published by His Excellency, the Minister of Health. Again, a very strong leadership, showing how our ministers can also publish. So that's you see how the publishing and dissemination is important at all levels of the global health ecosystem. So if you look at this, when the first case, the index case was declared, and then subsequently, and on your right, you see the network, the transmission, clusters of transmission. You remember those airports? Yeah, that's the way also the virus is moving. You see the index, and then the receiver, and then they're going to spread it. The recipient spread it to the next one, and then spread to the other one. That's how the virus can spread. and it's really the way, and that's what I was describing on that initial figure. So, but remember something here very interesting. When the PEP, post-exposure prophylaxis clinic, was established, and then vaccination campaign started or was initiated, you see something very interesting. And then that's my question to those who actually have listened to what I've said before. And Clive will collect the answers. And then what is the power of something here? And that's the way people actually and the country declared after the introduction of the fantastic medical countermeasures, the decline in number of cases, and then Marburg was declared over. So I think this is things that we need to do. But what I want to say here is that pandemic virus, and that is true almost for all cases, plus vaccines equal to end game. This is my mathematical formula. And the other formula is vaccine plus vaccination will save life. You can have vaccines, baby. You don't vaccinate, that's another point. People have to be immunized, get the jab to be able to really play the game. So that end game can only account if vaccination is part of that equation. So, but again, I'm not saying vaccine is the only solution. I've said it earlier. The other non-pharmaceutical interventions and so on. But again, we have to be very careful in terms of risk communication, community engagement. But we are saying face mask. And then we say 100 kilometers, say this. And then tomorrow we say 100 meters and say we need no face mask. Then we're creating confusion because outbreaks start at community and end again there. So people have to be on very clear understanding on the rationale of what each of those medical or non-pharmaceutical interventions will play in terms of that equation that are plotted in there. Vaccines, again, post-pandemic virus, plus vaccination equal end game. So I think this is important. I just wanted to be sure I flag this. So lastly now, what do we do? As I've said earlier, I'm not the guy that will then jump on the table, start crying, and then you drag attention, and then you do nothing. No. When you do that, and then go back in the situation room and say, what do we do? We can't just be crying and then do nothing. Now that you've cried, you need to do something, honestly speaking. So now we're saying to be able to address all these critical issues, either diagnostics, therapeutics, vaccines, we need to build an R&D ecosystem. We need to take ownership of R&D. It has to be Africa-led, regionally connected, and globally relevant. So we cannot be doing this and we're only spending 1%, less than 1% of our GDP into R&D. We cannot address all these challenges. We need to invest into domestic resource mobilization, partnership, and really creating that a conducive environment at the academics and so on, attracting the young scientists into science, research, and innovation. We can only do that if we invest into R&D. I think that's it. There's no two ways. And then R&D is capital intensive. So and we cannot only heavily rely on the global north to be able to do that. There's a limit at which they can support us. So I think Achieve Africa stand at really connecting, building infrastructure, expertise, attracting the young scientists, really to be trained, support the research and development across the continent. Build a pipeline of vaccines. I gave you a long list of pathogens. How do we prioritize? Then also being able to use disruptive technology like mRNA. Remember, mRNA, when you leave this call, is not just for COVID. It can be across disease. Disease agnostics can be used for pivot for any other disease. And more interestingly, even sickle cell anemia for editing. Very interesting. mRNA can do several other things that we are really not looking into. I think we can talk about it on a separate call. So Achieve Africa is a $100 million project. And then for 5 years, and during the course, we looked at, for all those diseases are presented, we only have few vaccines. And if you look at this bubble chart, on the y-axis, you have prevalence, on the x-axis, mortality. The larger the bubble, the higher the prevalence and mortality. And obviously landing on the three major killers on the continent: tuberculosis, malaria, HIV. We're lucky at least for TB. We have BCG, but there are several others in the pipeline funded again by the Gates Foundations and other institutions. Malaria, we have 2. Well, excellent. Good job. But again, it saves at least mortality, reduce mortality, hospitalization. I think this is good. Less and less children are going to really to the hospital because they received their vaccination, their jab. Fantastic. It's not the best in terms of efficacy, but it's doing the job. This is what we want to see. If in the village, the clinic cannot see more than 10 children again due to malaria, at least presumptive malaria, this is fantastic. If they were seeing 80 every single during the rainy season, I think now it means that we're making good progress. I think this is good. But the rest, the gray ones, no vaccines available. So we developed the Achieve Africa was established to really address issues.
Prof, you're on mute. Yes, Prof, you're on mute.
Being procured by Gavi, the Gavi Alliance, or supported through the African Vaccine Manufacturing Accelerator from Gavi, or the African Pool Procurement Mechanism for the vaccine made in Africa. So we have a governance structure. You can see this spanning across the different thematic across the value chain, the genomics and epidemiology for sequencing and so on, the lab science and preclinical science, the translational research and clinical science, manufacturing. Underneath that, data management, community engagement, human resource development. So this is the network, over 50 partners globally, 20 countries across the continent, again, using the open and spoke model. How do we pair a site in South Africa with a site in Nigeria to build their capability, or to Rwanda, Kenya? Those with vast experience into clinical trials can actually really be used, leveraged to support the network. The training is already happening for biomanufacturing. This is one of the sites at CSR in South Africa where young scientists, Africans, are really going on through hands-on training, biochemical engineering and so on, to be sure that they actually can be repositioned to support the industry and the agenda on local manufacturing. So soon we'll have launched a call, Be Ready, those who are eligible, less than 35 years, and we'll be targeting academia for trainings in GMP or GXP+, MSAT regulatory, and then we issue a certificate really in collaboration with higher education institutions across the continent. Subsequently, then a placement within the industry, DCVM and globally, and some of the manufacturers on the continent, 6-month internship and fellowship placement, and then employment, because the 60% by 2040 will require that you and I, all of us, we actually stay behind the instrument, the engines, the bench to be able to move this. And then finally, building an alumni of trainers to be able to train others across the continent. So this is a little bit where you see the manufacturers across Africa. You can see, recognize your country there. The dark spot, the black cycle field black in there, are those with manufacturers with a tech transfer agreement. The blue, light blue cycles are those with facilities but no tech transfer deals. And the white spot are those that are actually actively working with a national plan. The infrastructure facilities are still under construction, and they also obviously no tech transfer deal. So Achieve Africa, in summary, is for scientific leadership, African ownership, then addressing the continental agenda for vaccines, building capacity and capability, and also enabling continental R&D ecosystem. So my takeaway, I think we are really having a blended financing mechanism. The $100 million are from different funders, but more importantly, from the African government that have committed, namely Rwanda, Nigeria, Zambia, South Africa, Ethiopia, Uganda, committing each $5 million for the cost of the grant, meaning $30 million, and the rest are from partners, including the University of Pennsylvania, $50 million, and other partners supporting really the human capital development. We're still in really conversation with all other stakeholders, the European Union, the Wellcome Trust, the Gates Foundation, Alma Foundations, and so on to be able to support this. So this is my last slide just to lighten up as we are winding in, I think, closing my presentation. This is one of those events in South Africa with a Nobel Prize winner really pushing for mRNA, expanding mRNA technology across the continent. The president of Zambia during the launch of Achieve Africa on the sideline of the 39 Africa Union Assembly. We had our first investigators meeting in Addis Ababa with over 50 investigators across Africa brainstorming on the work plan moving forward. So I'll end here to say and thank all our partners, all of you in the room. You're also a partner. You're partners at whatever level. You can amplify the call. And saying we can do it. And then you're already a partner by doing so. The industry, the Korean government, and other government that have joined the establishment of IVI, the WHO, UNICEF, CEPI, the Right Fund, and all other partners, the Gates Foundation, Wellcome Trust, and those that are really supporting. Thank you so much. And back to you, Clive. I try to be a little slow and so that I can get the message straightforward to our audience here. But back to you, Clive.
Thank you, Prof, for such an inspiring talk. It's very insightful, and we are really charged to provide solutions so that Africa moves forward in the vaccine manufacturing. So I request the audience to post their questions on the chat section or on the Q&A section so that they are addressed. Yes, kindly post your questions on the chat section or the Q&A section. Or if your internet is stable, you can use the raise hand icon and I unmute you to ask a question. Yes, we'll start with Bracings. Bracings, kindly go ahead and ask your question.
Good day, everyone. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. So I would like to ask this question. So my name is Blessing from Nigeria. So here in Nigeria, I once heard about an institute working on vaccine design research projects. So I would like to know where are the centers located in Nigeria, probably young scientists like us can actually do internship and then get straight on the project.
Yes. I think you're not very clear. The sound is not very clear. Can you repeat the question?
Can you hear me now? Is it clear like this? Hello?
Yes, your sound is not very clear. You can work on the mic and then we come back to you. Yes, Dr. Ezechiel.
Can you hear me now? Is it clear?
Not really clear.
Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. So I said, my name is Blessing from Nigeria. So I've heard about vaccine design research projects in Nigeria, but I can't really remember where exactly the institute. So I would like to ask that, can we have a list of institutes in Nigeria where there's currently a project going on vaccine design and on vaccine research in Nigeria, whereby young scientists like us can actually maybe do internship and then volunteerism so that I can learn in that project. So that's my question.
Yes,
Clive, you want me to take the question or the?
Yeah, yes, you can take the question.
Yeah, if I heard correctly, it's a line listing of institutions. I think we can provide that. On our website, it's not yet there, the Achieve website, but the plan is really to complete the gap assessment with all our investigators. I think I can see some of the investigators online. And once we have those one, we can definitely, in addition of university, higher education institutions, if you are, I'll give you an example, you're in Nigeria, a University of Ibadan, or in Ghana, a University of Ghana. So all these institutions will going to be linked to a training program on human capital development. And we're definitely going to advertise it for the fellowship. So you're going to be out there. So just be keep an eye on it. You apply, and there's a selection process. We're establishing the selection committee already. Very high respect, well-renowned researchers on global health. We're going to sit there. And then if you are selected, yes, you're going to be posted to one of those institutions for your internship. So I can say that it's still in progress, but we have already completed at least the mapping of where we think the support can be. But the bottom line here is that being closer to the industry, because that's the support we want to provide to support that industry, to get the industry to get to 60%, and then university closer to those ones, and also networking across the higher education institutions. If the industry is not ready or to accommodate, we can actually have placement in any part of the world. It could be Indonesia, any other low middle income countries with the capabilities. So it's a call for all Africans. So we are all going to be eligible. But you see, the funders has a restriction less than 35. I saw a question on what about those above 35? Yes, these are definitely mid-career scientists or researchers at that particular age. So they can be part of these research teams at country level where they can actually provide really their own expertise to run some of those address some of the questions that we are looking at during the I presented the different work streams and so on. They can be part of any of the tracks and contribute to the science. As I've said, Africa-led, regionally connected, globally relevant. Over to you, Clive.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Sechel, you can go ahead and ask your question. Unmute and
okay, thank you, Clive, for giving. Yes, thank you, Clive, for giving me the floor. I don't know if I'm being heard.
You're loud and clear, sure.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Go ahead.
I will just want.
Hello. Yes, we have lost.
Thank the Prof for the.
Yes, Sechel, the sound is not clear. We are losing you.
Yeah.
You're not audible. Yes. Let's go to the Q&A section and see the questions there. There is one question from Prosi asking, does the vaccine manufacturing pipeline achieve creating include production of reagents on the continent? Yes, Prof.
Clive, what is the question? Sorry, the question. I didn't get it.
Yes, this is a question on the Q&A section asking from Prosi, asking does the vaccine manufacturing pipeline achieve is creating include production of reagents on the continent?
Oh, yeah, that's a very good question. And it's the question, and again, I presented on vaccines, right? So as you see, the International Vaccine Institute. I would not want to claim on the diagnostics, on therapeutics, but ultimately, the skill set, even for the training we're providing, going to be a platform and a basis for research in general. Whether you're doing therapeutics, other products, that's going to be the same one. If you do GCP, GLP, good lab practice, or good clinical practice, good manufacturing practice, and so on, and our GXP plus, I think it's going to be applied to all, including vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics. So, and again, if you look at it, the entry point is epi and genetics, genomic surveillance, and so on, because once you have all these pathogens, and most likely if you're looking, I'm giving a case here, dengue, you're trying to develop an assay for dengue virus. First, you need the sequences of dengue virus, right? And there are different families here and there. Then you get all the sequences. For those who are familiar, and some are already here, you are do the alignment of all the sequences. And then you look at the target, probably the more conservative regions. And that's what you use as base as your immunogen to develop the diagnostics or target for therapeutics or for vaccines. So that's the integrated, really, product development. So, but we are just branching on the vaccines. Some can use the same alignment, go for product development, including therapeutics, and then also diagnostics. So that's a very short answer to your question. Thank you.
There's also another question from Olive asking, hello, and thank you for the excellent presentation. My name is Olive, and I'm from Cameroon. Sometimes vaccines are available and affordable or even free, but there's resistance among the population. This is the case in my country, Cameroon. I could like to know what measures are being taken to increase community acceptance of vaccines, particularly those produced in Africa.
Excellent question as well. That's exactly, that's a great question. The reason here, and I want to be very, again, open, is that research sometimes and often, and there are very few countries, I think countries doing excellently well, Uganda, Kenya, South Africa, and those. I'm just naming a few, so don't think I've not listed your country. They are doing well into community engagement. It's important. It's important to carry along your community with you. In the early phase, even conceptualization, they can help you design even your study the way you haven't thought of it. Because in the end, you need participants in your study, and then they'll tell you, no, you cannot get it this way. That's the way to do that. Then you get your sample size on time and so on to be able to conduct your, until you get to those that actually are the prime entry for your research. It's difficult because in the end, what we're doing now in terms of discovery, development, delivery, that delivery, where are we delivering it? Community. The product will end in the community. So then if the community doesn't know what you're doing, there's going to be reluctance and then what you can call resistance or hesitancy and misinformation, disinformation. The point is that because they don't know what you're talking about, they were not involved. Now you're coming to them with the end product and you're telling them it's safe, it's efficacious, all this big grammar from the science, but they don't understand it. But if they were allowed really from the beginning, they'll say, no, okay, they explain the layman language is this. And then the community, the advisory board, community advisory board will break it down further, even translate it into the local, even if it's Munyankole or Muganda. So they will understand that, okay, this is what is meant for. And then you give very good example. Then you are convincing that one before even the product land. They even be looking for it. They're going to tell you now there's a product there. It's called Lenacapavir, but it's even if they call it whatever, but they know that, no, this product now, so there's a game changer. And then everyone will, before the product, they have already even mobilized the community for you. But sometimes we are so disconnected. And the reason, again, back to Dr. Olive's question, is because we're not leading this research. The research just coming from phase 3 that we start enrolling our own people. No, we need to be part of the conversation from the beginning. So we are not consumers, but we're contributing to the science. Let's say now we are launching this Achieve, and you recall I mentioned under cross-cutting, you have data management, you have community engagement. We thought of it. Because you need to engage this community early enough. And I will conclude there to say during COVID, that was the case. The African Union had mobilized resources, and the only vaccine we're looking at from different reasons was the J&J vaccine. And someone can tell me why. Because the mobility of our own population, it was a single dose. And regardless, those who are in the research for long, they will tell you attrition is a problem. So now if you go in the community, some are using helicopter for vaccination, or this horse, like in Lesotho, to get to the nearest or the hard to reach population. You don't want to go there twice. So you go there once and you be sure that you cover, vaccinate as much as you can, and then back to the city. But if you have to go back to that same, you are the likelihood that you meet because of the nomadic nature of our own population, you will not find those white initially. So we went for that vaccine. And then came all the issues around side adverse event, the pharmacovigilance. Well, it's a pandemic. You all agree with me. All these vaccines, they had to go through emergency use authorization listing. Then all this issue came. And we've already invested into it. There were two things. What do? We don't have funds to afford to the big ones, the mRNA ones. I'm not giving names. But what we had to do is that we had to bring our own data from the continent, because South Africa, again, thanks to the government there, they had vaccinated mass vaccination using the J&J. We went back there and looked at the data. The data was not reflecting what the global north had as data. I would say we'll continue. These are our own data, and this is an African population, and then it's working perfectly. And because the community could defend it as well. No, I got in my job, I have no issues. Then everyone was, so we have to carry our own population along. Science is not just limiting ourselves in the bench, doing the fantastic research, immunogenicity and all those very complicated things for some of those in the room. But again, be sure that we translate it into a layman language. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you, Prof. We acknowledge that we have received the question from Petu Mwesigo about H that has been addressed. Also, we have received a question from Ngeje Nathan about vaccine hesitancy. Also, that has been addressed. There is also a question from Christine Tieno asking, Christine, a public health recent graduate. I am interested in contributing to Africa health through research and advocacy. Kindly, how can one join the Achieve program from Kenya? Yes. Yes, Prof. Can I go ahead?
Yeah, okay, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. No, Christine, the good news is that our country office, we have the government of Kenya has approved the country office to be in Nairobi. We're going to sign the agreement in the coming days and so on. So our project will be going to be based there. There will be positions open. Please apply from Nairobi or wherever you are, Kisumu, to join the team there and contribute to the science. That's what much I can say there. So yes, we are even closer to Christine than others in the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, there is a question from Pascal Ngonda. Thank you, Prof. What could be your advice for young scientists still in undergraduate? Where should they start from?
Yeah, I think this is that's why even I'm here. So to be honest, we have the mentors in the room already. They are seeing the question. It's really to make this what we're doing attractive for the graduate. We are done. I think I know that maybe I can be, I'm not sure I will be Nobel Prize, but please, my sister Betty in the room, I'm sure she's laughing. Yeah, we have already passed some of these steps and stages and of complications that we want to see now the young ones be Nobel Prize of medicine or whatever. So this is our own duty to make this attractive. And that's what we're going on our way to be sure that we build, we really let a legacy. If a network like Achieve is established, whoever is wherever in the world, they can come and contribute and do the good science they can do. And the other thing is, how do we engage with universities? Because that's where these graduates, they all go. after their bachelor degrees and so on, the first thing you want to do is either a master, is something. What we're saying is that there's opportunities in let's say biotechnology. That's what I want to see things happening. That more young graduates saying, "Oh, what am I going to do? I'm not going to do philosophy or have diplomacy, or am I doing biotechnology, microbiology?" We receive these kind of questions quite often. But the point is that you do that, you need to look at the employment landscape. And that's usually what we don't do. We just embark into a master's in physics. I have nothing to do with physics. I'm just or philosophy or something. I'm just saying, let me show when we complete, we have a job there waiting for us. Let's not do it. And then we start roaming around and say, oh, no, it's really hard getting a job on this continent. I must go through this Mediterranean, whatever happen will happen. No, because we are all part of it. It's your own life, your own destiny. So, but if the system, we reshape the curriculum, what we're now lecturing at whichever university, is it reflective of what we're saying we need to manufacture 60% by 2040? So that the young scientists or the graduate there, they see that, oh, there's a prospect for me going into biochemical engineering, or me going into clinical trials or regulatory systems and so on. Really, that part is not clear for some of our graduates. I think this is where we're trying to bring our contribution, saying this is the agenda the politicians want. Is the curricula mimicking that political will? How do we make it really a reality? And then we can take it from there. I've shown you young scientists with masters that are moving into hands-on biomanufacturing. These are people ready for employment because they are not out there. We cannot find them. We look for them. If I show the survey from the industry, they are looking for those like yesterday. So thank you so much, Clive. And then these are very good questions.
Yes, thank you. Due to time, I'm afraid we might not answer all the questions, but keep them coming and they'll be addressed in due course. So one more last question from, this one was from Jinedu. Yes, got one more question. Yes, this was from Jinedu. My name is Jinedu Mungaru from Federal Ministry of Health and Social Welfare, Nigeria. And my question, what can we do to address the obvious failure of converting continental consensus into coordinated action? When African Union commitments on vaccine sovereignty are not reflected in national budgets, countries still procure externally despite the push from Africa CDC. And regulatory alignment through the Africa Medicine Agency remains slow. And what concrete mechanisms could shift this from agreement to execution? Thank you.
No. I think Barrister Chinedu, it's a very clear, smart question. Yeah, I think this is again when we have 55 countries, it's not easy to get a consensus, right? We all agree there. That's number one. Number two, there are so many initiative, is it initiative even I would say it, so continental instrument, Agenda 2063, Accra Reset, Abuja Declaration, Maputo something Declaration, then the Lusaka Agenda. So we really, if you look at this, these are all capital cities of the continent. You know, maybe next time they will tell you something else. But the point is that I understand, having worked with the African Union, the rationale behind this, because you really want to bring a political dialogue. But the point is that when these are actually been endorsed at the head of state level, the follow-up, the implementation is a problem. We need technocrats at some point to stop and say, all these frameworks and all these compact, how do we implement them? What is the M&E framework for the to really monitor the implementation? Because it's good to say something 30 years after only 2 or 3 have achieved 15% of their GDP for health. So what is then the essence? I mean, we should stop it because it's not working actually. Or we can actually stop at some point and say, why is it not? And then reframe it. Because this is the same question on vaccination Dr. Olive asked. If something is not working, let's find out why from our member state and tweak it so that we can get the right way of addressing it. So that is our issues. And then again, I have no issue with that. Sometimes these frameworks are developed by consultants, and we don't even know the details of those ones. So that makes it difficult to even implement. So that is really an issue. But we're seeing some very good clarity at some point where we are getting agenda on African pool procurement mechanism because it's needed. We have shown it during COVID, the African Vaccine Acquisition Trust, mobilizing 37 countries to aggregate procurement for COVID-19 vaccines, driving down the cost and increasing the volume. It's fantastic. It worked. But my point is that it's always when we are pushed to the wall that we all come together and get things done. In peacetime, we drag our feet. When there's a crisis, we now move and faster than everyone in the world. So that is the issue. But the point here, we published that in Nature Comes, where we actually looked at the different continental instruments. And our conclusion is that we need an M&E framework to evaluate this. Like the Millennium Goals, they stop somewhere and say, what is not working? 15 of these indicators, we didn't achieve anything. This is where we are. But when we say Agenda 2063 or Abuja Declaration, who is monitoring it? Maybe someone is monitoring. I'm not aware really that I've seen a publication closely monitoring like AMA, or we know that 30 or whatever have ratified the remaining. I'm not seeing that. But this is, again, getting the technocrat, those that come to the legislator, coming together when these big initiative instruments are being launched, be sure that they understand. Because ratification will be at country level. And if they are not involved in, when they land with them, they will just drag their feet because they don't even understand it. Someone has to explain to them. So that's a little bit. So, Clive, I'm going to rush for a meeting in the next 3 minutes. I just want to be aware that because I see a lot of those questions, I'm happy to respond via email. But because the next meeting is very far from my office, I want to be sure I'm there on time.
Yeah, yes, Prof. Thank you, Julia. Informed me of the same. So we'll close it here. Maybe you could give your final remarks and then close it here.
No, thank you so much. I think I will be glad to come back anytime you deem fit. I'm so happy that we pass on the message and the questions, the excellent questions. And we stand happy, those who want to get more information on Achieve Africa. We have a website, and some of the partners that are in country, we'll get them on our website, like Dr. Betty, she's an investigator. She's on this call from Uganda. She might support. So thank you so much. Please remember my previous slide, individual, institutional capacity building. We can all make it for the Africa we want. Thanks, and back to you, Clive.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much to everyone in this webinar. We could like to hear about your experiences and what else you could like us to discuss in upcoming forums. Before we close, kindly requesting that you take a few minutes to respond to the post-webinar survey posted in the chat. There is a link there. Have a nice day and looking forward to more engagements with everyone. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you so much.